Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Jewellers Academy podcast. My name's Elin. I'm a jewellery designer, maker, and tutor. And today on the podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Ruth and Brendan from I Am Acrylic. I Am Acrylic make cute, colourful, and quirky jewellery from acrylic, as you might have guessed. Everything's hand cut by Ruth and Brendan using a fret saw rather than a laser. And as well as selling their pieces online, at events, and through stockists, they also have a small but perfectly formed shop in central Bristol. We often speak to silversmiths and goldsmiths on the show, so it's a real treat today to talk to some jewellers who are working in a completely different medium. I can't wait to get stuck into this one, so let's go for it. Welcome, Ruth and Brendan.
Hi. Hi.
Hi. Can you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves and your jewellery business, please?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Well,
We didn't make an arrangement on who was going to talk.
well, I guess we both studied fine art at Art College, Winchester School of Art, which is where we met.
In 1999.
We were both doing fine art. I was doing fine art painting, and Ruth was doing fine art printmaking.
Printmaking with no printmaking. Lots of sewing.
And we kind of united the fine arts.
Yes.
We crossed the divide.
I like it.
The Art
Yeah,
College.
don't mix with the other disciplines.
You were like the Romeo and Juliet of the art college.
And then
Fast forward 5 years, and we were living in London, and we had borrowed a fret saw, mechanical saw from my dad. We can't remember what we had it there for, but one of our neighbours, who we didn't know, someone had chucked out some acrylic sheets out the front of our flat. So we were like, "Ooh, magpie, we'll have them." And I made some. We've got a bit of show and tell for the video, but we'll explain it on the podcast as well. I made some handbag handles from the acrylic that we found. So this was a knitted handbag, and I made some acrylic handles for it. And then I don't know what else we made, but then Brendan made me this keyring, which is like a fluorescent orange bird keyring, based on a logo of a film company. They had a huge logo on the side of a car park next to their offices, and I'd always loved it. So Brendan made me this for my birthday, and I was working in the design bookshop Magma at the time, and the buyer there said, "Oh, you could make some. We could sell them in the shop if you want to make some more." So we were like, "All right, we'll have a go." Yeah, okay. And then so we did, and made other things like butterfly key rings on bobble chain. And we didn't have a brand name then either, so this has got my email address, which was neverwhere@netscape.net.
Very catchy. I love it.
Really professional start to our jewelry career. But basically, so we started it by accident.
Yeah,
Is
accident.
the short answer to your question. Accidental jewelers. And then Brendan sort of did it by himself, really, for the next 6 years. Sort of for my birthday or Valentine's Day, making something else like this is a bird necklace. So upgrading to necklaces, not just key rings with bubble chain, with a little heart dropping off it, and then you got more stockists as well, didn't you? I mean, off the back of being stocked in Magma, that was actually a really good platform to say we're stocked here, and would you like to try my stuff? And you approached a few other independent galleries.
Yeah, so this was in 2000, started in 2004. So we recently celebrated our 20th anniversary of running the business.
Congratulations.
But back then, I think Etsy only started in 2005.
Yeah, it wasn't such a thing as it is.
And online selling was
now. Online selling wasn't a thing.
Wasn't
an easy
huge.
thing anyway.
So yeah, the only places that to sell were shops really and markets, which we didn't do at that time. But and it was a very part-time thing anyway. So um, just making a few things for Magma every few months, whilst doing my I was working for a art magazine part-time. And so again, you know, it wasn't something that we intended on doing, and it still wasn't back then something that we thought was a or something that we wanted to do. It
We're
was
not
just
really planners.
I think this is it's going to be a recurring theme in this, that we didn't intend to do where we are now, and we haven't planned anything. But yeah, it was for the first 5 or 6 years, it was a very slow, gradual, accidental process of, oh, Magma wants some more stuff, so I'll make some stuff. Oh, maybe we should see if that other shop wants to stock our things. And you know, I approached a few shops um, off the back of being stocked in Magma, and
And did you get approached by a couple of
and then I think being
online only sort of businesses as well that were selling other independent, like small makers things, and they approached you?
so
So
being stocked in Magma and other shops generated interest from other shops who saw our products in those shops. And again, back then there were a lot more, I think, a lot more independent shops,
Yeah.
and fewer makers. I would say there was less competition, because it was
Possibly.
more difficult. I think the barrier.
You had to do a trade fair, didn't you, really, to get your stuff seen and into shops. There wasn't Instagram or like that didn't exist. That kind of putting yourself out there. You had to actually. I mean, we never did a trade fair, actually, just to make that clear, because we
Well,
weren't.
we had a shortcut because
Oh yeah, we had a shortcut because of
Ruth was a buyer at a shop,
yeah.
and so we were able to
We got our
sidestep
foot
it a
in the
bit.
shop door, as it were, and then grew it a bit from there. And
Yeah, it's interesting that it's grown so it started certainly so kind of organically that, as you say, you were accidental jewelers rather than having some grand plan for what you were going to do. What made you go? Because obviously we're starting with the key rings. What made you then sort of branch into jewelry specifically? Was that just to kind of give it a whirl, or did you have any particular plans for that?
I mean,
I think it was dictated by what Magma suggested. I think.
quite possibly they were like, "Do you want to make necklaces?" Oh, all right, yeah,
Do you want to make
maybe
brooches?
Yeah, okay, give that a go. Or well, I suppose that Magma was selling other jewelry, not a lot of jewelry at that time, actually. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I always bought necklaces. You know, we went to craft fairs, and I always would buy sort of some. I've always been really into brooches and like
Mm,
big brooch collection, and it's my favorite thing to do. It's like look at other makers' stuff, and I might have to get one of those.
But
So
I
it
think
was
there was also,
possibly if you were thinking of getting me a gift, you thought you'd make me a gift.
yeah,
I think
yes, yeah.
that would be it as well.
and also the realization that that's what actually sells: necklaces, brooches, jewelry, rather than it's easier to sell those rather than sculptures or individual artworks or things like that.
Sure, sure. And I guess having that kind of direct link with the shop to begin with as well was you almost were getting kind of real time market research from what people
Yeah,
were buying and what people were interested in, which is really, really
yeah.
helpful for sure.
David Schwimmer would buy.
David Schwimmer.
Do you remember that?
Oh, and
Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie bought some of our stuff. I
Oh,
think
fantastic. What a collection of people.
Yeah, that was the advantage of selling in such a uh, well positioned, high profile shop in central London, that
mm,
in theatre land as well. Actually, there were
yeah,
so many actors
that's
and
true. Not that we got celebrity endorsement, but we just got told, so and so has bought one of your things, huh?
Just to know is good enough sometimes, isn't it? That's great. And so did you, I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying, it was essentially kind of exploration and, teaching yourself how to do all these things. Did you ever take a course or anything like that? Or was it literally just trying things out, seeing what worked and what didn't?
We never did a course. I mean, my dad was a CDT teacher,
Yeah,
which
I think
is a big part of all of this, really, because I grew up making stuff, making jewelry for my mum for birthday presents, like having a little go at enameling, silver silver brooch making,
forging.
I've made a hat stand out of forged ironwork, turned
Amazing.
I mean, it was kind of like my upbringing was all about tools and dad always made jewelry as well. And my uncle is a silversmith. So it's kind of
It's in the family. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
interesting.
Your brother's an archaeologist.
my brother's an archaeologist. That right? But he also made a beautiful enamel brooch for my mum one year in the workshop with my dad. So
Yeah, I think,
we've all dabbled.
and I think
Yeah.
very much you have that background, and I think it came naturally to you to
Mhm.
make stuff, and your dad has always been.
Yeah, he gave us a lot of tips on how to work with acrylic as well. And we'd made key rings at school, that in the 90s at school you used a fret saw and
Yeah.
made key rings, maybe polished it up. We still haven't got a polishing machine actually, which is one of my favorite things used to be polishing the edges of the acrylics.
I remember that. I remember that well. Yes.
It's
90s
just like
flashback.
just mad.
And we also, when we get people in the shop of a certain age,
Oh yes, I was thinking about that. Yeah.
we also people come in and say, "I remember making a key ring."
Or on the markets. Well,
Yeah.
sometimes they've still got it. They're like, I
Yeah.
need a clock. Have you still got it? Yeah, my dad has it.
I think it's very clear that the syllabus in the early 90s was make a key
Yeah.
ring out of acrylic, make a clock out of acrylic.
Yeah.
There were a lot of clocks for sure. I remember that well. Yes, definitely. So I mean, when obviously, as you were saying, you kind of learned quite a lot from your dad, and he was able to kind of pass on, I guess, useful information about how to work with acrylic. But is there anything, like, as a material, is it fairly kind of intuitive? Is there anything specific that you have to know about working with it, or?
Well, yeah, we were thinking about that, and I think we sort of you learn by trial and error. If you drill too close to the edge, it's going to shatter. Or, if we've got a pillar drill, but we found clamping, because if you're trying to do small things, it's hard to hold it because it whizzes around, obviously, if you're drilling and you can't keep hold of the thing. But if
Yeah.
you clamp the acrylic, it shatters as well. So, then you learn not to work with anything too small. Or you drill a hole before you cut it out. So you kind of through making mistakes, I think, is how you learn a lot of things, isn't it? But
But
Definitely.
it's difficult for us to know because, well, I don't have much experience of using other materials, so I don't really have anything to compare it with. But people who come in, we run workshops, and sometimes people who come to the workshops have worked in silver, and they say that actually that the
it's
process is very similar, but obviously
Mm.
the material is a lot
it's
easier,
softer,
softer to
easier
work
to
with.
cut. Um, yeah, and we we experimented with bending the acrylic as well, like heating it up. But that was again, well, you can look stuff up online now, can't you? You can do YouTube tutorials, and I think we just looked up what temperature does it need to be, and we
Mm.
put it in the oven. We've got a heat strip which my dad made in the 1960s, I'm going to say, which has broken now, unfortunately. But we started using that. He made some, don't know what did he make? My mum was a netball umpire, and he used acrylic to make a holder for her pad and pen and stopwatch. So that was
Amazing.
it came in handy for that. So bending acrylic was something I knew about. But yeah, so I did, yeah, like
Yeah, but experimentation and
experimentation.
trying and failing and making mistakes, and yeah, again,
Yeah.
gentle.
And tips from other makers a little bit in terms of sort of discussing, people you meet at markets. Markets are so brilliant for meeting other makers using
Yeah.
similar materials and discussing techniques and tips and glues and what glues, and I'm having a nightmare with this, and what gets out we use super glue to do our brooch pins on the back. And if you've got any fingerprints, it leaves a white residue. And
Mm.
so we've, through trying different solvents, we know what gets that off if you've accidentally got that there. And then discussing that with someone else, oh my God, yeah, it's so annoying. And like kind of
Yes.
that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, a
Yeah.
lot of the other makers use lasers. So in terms of, that's a very different way of working.
Yeah. So I was
Can't
gonna
relate.
yeah, I was gonna
Putting it
ask you
together.
about that.
Yeah.
So what was kind of behind your decision? Because I know you're very firm that it's like, no, we hand cut our stuff. We don't use lasers. So is that just so that you have more control, or was there another reason for that?
Well, like everything with our not really planning stuff, it's just because we had the saw, we started using a saw. And, Brendan's really good on the mechanical saw. I'm not quite so good on a mechanical saw, but I'm really good with a hand saw.
Mhm.
Too, I'm not taking that away from you. But I might find that the mechanical saw runs away a bit too fast with me for detail. But I cut out things like the chunky beads that I'm wearing that don't need to be too precise to start with, because we sand
Mhm.
a bit. I'm good with the imprecise stuff, but with things like the bird designs that we have that have very, like, lines that have to, like a jigsaw puzzle, they have to sort of fit
Yeah.
really closely. But so, if you think about Brendan's been cutting stuff out for 20 years, it kind of doesn't make sense
Yeah.
to change the way we
But
do it now either.
but the well, I really enjoy the process of using
Mm.
hand tools.
Yeah, we are
Yeah,
quite hands-on people. We're not very technical
yeah.
in any other aspects of our life.
So being able to take a sheet of plastic, draw a shape on it, and then immediately cut it out, and that immediacy is something that I really enjoy.
Mm.
And also, the design and the making process of using the saws um, influences how our designs turn out, because we can't go too
Yeah, it's a big
complicated.
part of our style, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, with laser cutting, it's amazing because
The
yeah,
detail and the level of intricacies is mind-blowing.
yeah,
Like, quite a lot of people's stuff, so
you can do pretty much anything.
I mean, I try and design stuff like that, and then Brenda's like, "What are you doing?" Like, that's not right. If you wanna do that, and then it's gonna take you 50 hours to piece it all together. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in a way, it's nice to have the limitations of what
Yeah.
is physically possible to challenge your design process, because you can't do anything. You have to do things within the limits of your
Yeah.
capabilities. And
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I that really resonates with me because I think there's a lot to be said for sort of imposing some kind of parameters on what you do, so that you could make everything, but actually, if you say no, I'm going to hand cut everything, or I'm only going to use circles, actually, it leads to more interesting designs. I think because you're really kind of pushing the boundaries of what's possible, aren't you?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
fascinating. So, I mean, you guys have a really strong and recognizable kind of signature style. Is that something that developed over time? Is it something that you are really mindful of when you're designing, or does that just come very naturally?
I think, again, that's partly to do with the saw and the simplicity of things. But I was thinking about how we design stuff, and we both design things and we design them separately. So
yeah.
it's
We don't
two
design together.
people's styles. And I don't it's interesting, sometimes when people come in the shop, they're like, "Do you do it together?" And we're like, "Yeah, yeah, we do it together, but we're quite competitive because we also design stuff separately." And like, "And you've just bought one of mine, yay!"
One to me.
Or like, "Can you guess whose is whose?" And it's interesting because we get it really wrong, which is interesting. I don't know, but and we have very different. I'm very much. I like my things to be symmetrical if possible. Like I'm very uncomfortable with asymmetry and anything that feels like I don't know. But Brendan's very the opposite. So he's like, "What do you think of my design?" I'm like, "Yeah, I really like it, but I'm not sure about." And it's kind of
and vice versa.
equally. Brendan's like, "What if you just move that bit up a bit?" I'm like, "Oh." So it's funny, yeah, it's funny that from the outside it looks like there's a one style because
Coherence.
I think it's quite bunged in all together. I don't know. There's no plan for the style.
Back to
But
that theme again.
itself and the bright colours, that definitely is a starting point, isn't it? That
Yeah.
we don't use the pastel shades only, or we don't use. We sort of use all of them, but I think we're probably looking around more drawn to the bright colours.
Mhm. So where does your inspiration kind of typically come from? Would it be about getting some pieces of acrylic and kind of starting from the material, or is it like, oh no, I'm going to make a bird
Both,
brooch
but
or
I was thinking about that at the beginning when Brendan was making me bits from the stuff we'd found. That was definitely like, oh, I've got some blue. I'll make a bluebird, kind of swallow like the tattoo sort of design kind of thing. And then you carried on in that vein. You found an acrylic manufacturers and sign makers and got their offcuts from their offcut.
Mhm.
And then it was like, what can I make that I mean, to be honest, we had some like sort of quite weird brown and yellow kind of wagtails at one point, which they sold. It was just, so sometimes the design was a shape and then we just used what we had, but sometimes the colours dictated what the design was.
Mm.
But then we had got some best-selling designs, I suppose, that then got stocked in bigger places. So we were buying in the colours for the design. But then we flipped that around about 8 years ago-ish, 6, 8 years ago. We've kind of gone back to the materials are the first thing, and then we'll make what we can from that.
Mhm.
We had things like that actual acrylic manufacturer sign makers was closing down, and someone gave us a tip off that they're closing down and they've got everything in their yard for free. Go and get some
Wow.
stuff. Like,
Wow.
so we went with our trolley and got bags of kind of like odd, weird shapes and sort of chunky things and chunky acrylic and lots of brown, big brown acrylic, which, for the show and tell, I designed a big 70s
Oh
brown
wow, that's fabulous. Like a
button
big,
that used the thick
beautiful bottom.
brown. Like what could we ever make that people are going to want to wear that's brown? I mean, I love brown actually, but it's not doesn't sit necessarily in our usual style thing. So
Yes. Yes.
using, yeah, like you were asking, yeah, starting with the material rather than the design.
Mm.
We get given a lot. We've started to have a lot of waste material donated to us as well.
Yeah, I guess the more we talk about that's what we do, the more people are like, oh, do you want this? Then like
So yeah, your lumps actually, one of your best sellers are your lump necklaces, which came about because we got given a whole load of offcuts from laser cutters, other designers.
For the video there. There we layer up. I've sort of tried layering up 4 bits of offcuts, the tiny bits in between people's laser cut shapes.
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Cut out the nicest lump that we could get from it. And then so it's a stripy little lump.
Sort of nice chunkiness to it.
Right. About over 450 of them, which is just like, I don't know, that's a lot for us.
That's amazing. And am I right in thinking you got some boards donated from a visitor centre. Was it Stonehenge or somewhere, a visitor centre that you can brooches with?
So the display boards that were in the information centre that tell you what's on display, and this one that I'm holding up they had a Spinal Tap record that's in the shape of Stonehenge. So this explains that. So it says like Stonehenge rocks the inspiration for many bands, including legendary Spinal Tap, who produced the world's only trilithian shaped disc. I mean, it's quite dry. It's just like tells you what it is. And we got them. We were like, the red's not really that nice. It's I mean, it's a see-through. Once you've taken the backing off the sign, it's quite see-through. So it sort of goes darker when you put it. You can't really stick it on anything because it's see-through. And so then I just had a mini brainwave that I could do some wordplay with the words.
After 2 years of
We had it sitting there thinking about it. They gave us some big white shelves as well, which we used for other designs like white daisy, and we've used it for backing, and we've used it for the backing of these brooches. We call them the random phrase brooches. So this one says, "Has been found to be late."
I can think of a few people that could have that one.
So taking words from loads of the different signs and putting them together into random phrases.
Random phrases. I love that.
Or just little shorter ones, like one that just says "very hot," which hasn't sold yet. I don't know. No one's
That's amazing.
But they've got down really well. Brendan wasn't sure to start with, were you?
No, again, this is another.
It's like a running joke.
Another example of how differently we work and think. That when Ruth was developing these brooches, she asked me what I thought, and I was like, "What? That's
the
weird."
first one I did was lawnmowers are everything, which is so random. But actually, I was thinking about one of our friends online. Their kid, someone who we met at the markets. Actually, her kid is obsessed with lawnmowers. So I was like, yeah, for him, lawnmowers are everything. I love people that enjoy mowing their lawn, or it's just funny and silly. Yeah. So
I like them. They're quite poetic.
Gonna wear.
Yeah, I was
Gonna want.
I was trying to discourage her or give her advice about what she should do to change things, and I think that
no, it's just funny. And then I put it up on Instagram, and it got so many likes, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And Brendan was like, "What?"
and then when you launched them, they sold out within minutes.
Yeah, like a couple of minutes, which I was surprised about, because it's one thing finding it like funny and amusing and like in a picture, but I was so pleased that people like them. It's like
that's amazing.
Another batch now, but I'm running out of what. No, Brendan's still annoyed that they worked.
Understand how she makes, but it made me realise that actually, the way that we work is so different that I can't understand how she works, and sometimes she doesn't understand how I work. But there's nothing wrong with that, and it's actually fine. But it's just acknowledging that is how it is. And
yes. And I think what's interesting as well is the fact that the two of you are, sometimes when you see people who are working together in their business, then they might be taking on sort of different roles, but actually both of you are creating. And I think that's really interesting that you're kind of allowing each other the space, even if you don't really get it. It's like, what the heck? But you just let each other kind of get on with it. And yeah,
well, I mean, that's one of the other inspirations and motivations that I find, is that because we are quite competitive, if Ruth comes up with a design that I really like, I'll be really jealous, and it will spur me on to try and come up with a design that's better than that. But in a way that, acknowledging how great hers is, but wanting to push. Well, it pushes me to be more creative, and it pushes me to try and do something better than, not to better her, but to be a better designer.
You can say it. It's okay.
You're trying to, do the best.
Well, yeah.
That's really interesting. So what at the moment are your kind of best selling or I could guess over the past 20 years or so, what have been your best selling designs? Any
My,
favourites?
my birds are the best sellers at the moment.
Yeah, Brendan's in the lead, I think, with the birds. Well, for show and tell for the video, we started one of the really, really early designs was, I don't know if you can even see it.
Yes, I remember this little
Little
black
bird,
bird very well.
little black bird with a tiny beak, just a little blobby bird with a beak. And we've sold so many of those over the years, and we still have them in our shop. They're probably 15 years old.
Yeah.
Would you say something like that? But we graduated from that simple blackbird to something more like just reaching into the shop stock, like a woodpecker bird, which has how many pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 components that are all have
Yeah,
to be together, like
all joining up together. Yeah, interesting.
but yeah, so the birds now, I mean, you designed them during lockdown, I think, didn't you? Because
Yeah.
we were spending a lot of time in our. We had we've had a couple of pet robins in the past in our garden, and we love the birds. We're always talking to birds when we're on a walk. Yeah, a bit mad like that, but everyone loved the birds as well during lockdown, I suppose. So it kind of.
Yes.
But everybody loves birds.
But everybody loves birds still.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, I think
We have so many lovely birding, twitching chats when people come in. They're like, "I've seen a kingfisher." Like, "No, you haven't." "Oh, it's a gem." "I saw a woodpecker in my garden." We're like, "What?" So yeah, I think the bestsellers. Um,
and well, the Stonehenge
the
now
Stonehenge are coming
are
up,
becoming a bestseller.
Mhm.
And the lumps
the
have been a
lumps,
big bestseller.
and the flowers of the month. I've done like flowers of the month, which was inspired. When you talk about inspiration, I think books is a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Nostalgia. So my mum had a book about the language of flowers, and I found another one in a charity shop like a few years ago, and I was thinking, yeah, I quite like that. I have a lot of books that I read maybe one chapter of and then don't get back to them, but they still sit in there like the little seed of ideas or just having loved something.
And visually, the books that you like are inspired by a old vintage style.
Yeah, I do like the 70s and 80s. I don't know if it sticks with you, but one
Yeah,
of
that's interesting.
yeah, one of the other another book I got recently was this soft toys book from about the 70s, and there's a design in there that is a cat, which I'm just showing for the video, and he's just like this stuffed black cat, and I just adored him. And then
It's very cute.
I just want to make like a brooch version, but it turned out a little bit different for the video. But but we also had a lot of black that we'd been sent by mistake. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
it was like perfect. I'll do
Yes.
that. It's a good way to use that. But yeah, that just I only found the book a couple of months ago, and then straight off the back of it made the cat. But
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's
also
interesting.
creating a bit of stitching with the wool. I've always loved sewing, so
Yeah.
I sort of sneak that into designs when I can as well, which
Yeah,
is
nice. So tell us a bit more about your shop. You're on the Christmas steps in central Bristol, which is a beautiful, a beautiful kind of little row of um, quirky indie
yeah,
shops. But yeah, how did that come about? How did you end up moving to Bristol? And were you looking for a retail outlet, or how did that? Yeah, how did you come about the shop?
so we decided to move back. Brendan grew up in the sort of outskirts of Bristol and Bath,
Radstock.
Radstock, for
Gotcha.
anyone that
Shout out to the Radstock Massive.
so Bristol seemed like a natural fit for us. We haven't been in central London like for 17 years. So being in another city rather than moving to a smaller town or anything like that.
And when we were in London, we were just working from home, from our flat. So, but it turns out that every space within our flat was a working space. So we were basically living in our studio.
Not very much. Well, or just nowhere to eat your dinner.
Yeah.
Or...
every surface was had some tool or material.
Yeah.
So
yes, that's tough.
It worked for us when at that time in London when we were slowly building the business and doing markets, but it wasn't sustainable, and we did want to move to Bristol to be closer to family. Ruth's brother lives in Gloucestershire, so we were closer to him.
Brendan's family, his two brothers are here as well.
Yeah, so nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
And then so we were looking to move and to get somewhere that might have some dedicated workspace, so that we weren't living in our workspace. And then the idea of actually getting a commercial space, a shop, kind of made sense, that we would use the shop space as our workshop and then be able to open the door and let people in. So we weren't, it's not primarily a shop, it's primarily our workspace, which people can come
but
and buy
it
stuff.
Flip-flops in our minds, I think, between being it's a shop, let's tidy up, to we've got lots on, we're just working, it happens to be messy. Sort of prioritizing making stock for the shop. And well, we've tried different things over, so we've been here for 7 years, 7 and a bit years now. And we've tried things like we've felt that we couldn't keep enough stock in the shop to make it look busy enough. So we were also selling some vintage knickknacks, which is my specialist subject. So I got to buy stuff that I would like to buy and then try to sell it. And some of it didn't sell, which we now have in the house, but that's okay.
Actually, wasn't it?
A little bit of an excuse to
buy
the charity shop. Yeah. But yeah, so we'd also like on off the back of why we got a shop or a workspace. When we were working from home, it's quite, even though there's 2 of us, it's fairly isolating, if that's the right word, and you don't really see people. So we were quite jealous of people that had a studio space, and we were sort of thinking, oh, if we had a studio space, and like a bit like being back in art school, like throwing ideas around, bouncing ideas off people, getting inspired by other people's sort of enthusiasm,
just being more sociable,
a bit more social, yeah. But we've ended up having that with the shop because it's a really nice community on the street and around the whole area. So,
and then also customers coming
obviously,
in.
Having that as well, and like having market stall chats all the time with people.
Yes,
which really enjoy doing markets.
Yeah.
So
how do you work it? Do you have it open part of the time, or can people just kind of pop in if they're passing? How does it work?
Official hours Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 11 till 5. But then we've got a sign on the door that says, "Please knock if you want to come in." The other day, so yeah, we're kind of, and some people do, some people don't, and a lot of people are just having a look. It's a really nice, pretty, historic street. So you get a lot of people that they're not interested in acrylic jewellery, but they're having a nose in.
Yeah, sure.
We get that. We love having a nose.
Yeah, that's great. So, just looking back, I suppose, over your kind of past 20 years in business, what have the highs and lows been? Is there anything you'd have, anything really obvious, I suppose, that you'd have done differently if you were doing it again?
Well, again, I think the fact that it was accidental and we came into this without having any ambitions or ideas of what we wanted to achieve, just doing it was satisfying and an achievement in itself. But obvious highlights being things like being stocked in the Design Museum and Royal Academy. I think you did rate it as well, didn't you?
I did, yes, many years ago, yeah.
That was just a mind-blowing highlight.
Yeah.
Something that we never well, we never intended on wanting to do that. So actually achieving that was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm working with. Yeah, I can't really think of lows to kind of.
Well, yeah, that's the flip side of things. If you have no ambitions or
Yeah, I'm gonna
target,
Everything's a high.
create a blog every now and then, probably.
Yeah.
But then you just go outside or go to a museum or look in a book or take a break and come back to it. Or yeah, I think.
yeah, I think for me, keeping motivated is, after doing this for so long,
Mm,
keeping motivated and finding new challenges um, has been quite difficult recently,
Mm.
and it's uh, we might actually have to start getting ambitious and doing plans.
manifesting things, but well, I've started recently. Like you were saying, have you ever done a jewellery course or anything like that? I'm not doing a jewellery course, but I'm calling it a diploma. It's not, but I'm going to the library once a week and learning about the history of jewellery.
Oh, interesting.
Using
Wow.
a book written by Claire Phillips, the curator of the V&A jewellery stuff. Um, but it goes all the way back to like the Etruscans, and then I'm now almost finished it. I'm in the 80s, 90s, which is when the book was written. So it says it's from the like ancient era to the present day, but the present day is actually 25 years ago. Find another book to take me up to like now. But it's been really inspiring for me, and I'm learning all sorts of things that aren't going to be relevant to me, like fake pearls made of um, snail slime in the
Wow.
1500s or something like that, which I'm not going to try. But it's just really interesting. Lots of um, techniques, and I think I wanted to put what we do into a context of some sort because,
Yeah.
I've, like we say, literally accidentally been doing this for 20 years now without really necessarily thinking about why or where we are in the world or how we sit in things. I mean, when we do markets with 100 other makers, like the Crafty Fox ones that you do as well, you can kind of see where you sit in the world,
Mm.
I suppose. But yeah, I mean, that's that's been a way for me to keep motivated and interested. And
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's a challenge that lots of jewelers have because on the one hand, there's the kind of designing element, but then you're also a little bit like a kind of mini factory because you're just, there's a lot of banging out the same design potentially. I mean, depending on what you do, obviously, but yeah, it's trying to
the
still
fun
feel
not really.
inspired by things, and just as you say, go out and get some inspiration rather than kind of being in the workshop all the time, just doing. I think it does, yeah, it does help for sure. So what's next for you? I realise this is probably a silly question asking two people who are anti-planning. But have you got anything kind of coming up later this year or anything that you're working on at the minute?
Well, I'm doing my diploma, obviously.
Of course.
We're going to have a fake graduation.
Oh, that's going to be a 10-year course, I think. So I've already been kicked off a couple of times for non-attendance. But I think, just if we can carry on doing what we're doing for a living, then brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody who's ever bought our things. It's amazing that, some designs don't work. Some people don't buy
Sure.
even one of them sometimes, or maybe only one of them. And then you're like, oh God, is it something's gone wrong? It's not working. But then you do something else and it will resonate with people and they will
Yeah.
buy it. I think just keeping inspired, keeping it fresh.
Keeping developing. I mean, you're very good at experimenting and trying
I
different
love
things.
trying different materials and within the acrylic, like mixing in vintage materials, maybe
Mhm.
Different techniques.
doing a bit of resin with our acrylic dust that we save.
Mm.
Yeah, We would like to try heat pressing, which we've seen other makers doing, which we think would be a hugely brilliant experiment. But
to use up all
we
of
haven't
our
managed to, because we're not good at planning. We haven't managed to buy a heat press yet. Just been in the making for like 4 years, but it's one day it will happen. But yeah, just playing around, I think, and developing,
pushing each other, pushing ourselves, and pushing each other to just keep creating and stay interested.
Stay interested. And
that's always a challenge. Yeah, no, I think that's lovely. I think it's just that as you say, not everything you do is a kind of surefire success, but having that kind of playful experimentation kind of hat on rather than worrying too much about everything being a total sellout, I think means that you're always kind of coming up with new ideas and, as you say, just trying out what works and what doesn't.
The way we make things to order, so we only really normally make one, take a picture of it, and then if anyone orders it, we'll make more. So we're not ever in that position of having made a whole batch of stuff that we have to sell. Like, I mean, with the one-offs, like we'll make a load of lumps, or I make the Stonehenge brooches and hope that they sell. But primarily, we make stuff to order, so we don't have that pressure to sell what we've already made.
Yes.
So sort of have that playfulness in a way, because we're not sitting on a lot of stock.
Yeah, you haven't got 100 that you need to get rid of, and yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was really fascinating. I love hearing about, just people using a totally different medium, because I think it's I've known your jewelry for years and years and kind of seen it in different stockists and things, but it's good to just hear a bit of background and understand how you make it, and especially understand the extreme competitiveness between the two of you. It's clearly what drives you on.
The one up.
Exactly. Did you want to share where people can come and connect with you online, and also maybe the address of your shop in Bristol, just in case we've got anyone who's local to the area and fancies popping in?
So we're on Christmas Steps. We're number 7, which is my lucky number. And we're online, www.iamacrylic.co.uk. We're on Instagram. We're just at I Am Acrylic. We're on Facebook sometimes. That's the same. Acrylic.
All right.
And we're at Box Market next month.
Great. Okay. So if anyone's in London, they can come.
King's Cross in April.
On the Sunday,
the 15th, something like that.
Okay. All right. That's brilliant. Well, we can put all your website and social links and things in the show notes, so people can always take a look there if they didn't quite catch them. Thanks so much for joining me, and thanks everyone for listening this week. I hope you've enjoyed it too, and I hope you have a fantastic week.